"Am a virgin, please. Marry me, too old, 60 years bride begged, struggling cowboy marries her that day." The town of Willow Creek was small, quiet, and often overlooked by travelers passing through on the dusty highway. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and nothing much ever seemed to change. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting a golden light over the modest houses, the old brick store, and the wide stretches of farmland. Life here moved at a gentle pace, unhurried and predictable, but for some, that predictability could feel like a cage. At 60 years old, she was considered by many as the town's kind-hearted, gentle soul. Evelyn had a soft face with deep, expressive eyes that seemed to carry a lifetime of memories. Her hair, once a rich chestnut, was now silver and neatly tied in a bun whenever she went about her daily chores. She had never married, never had children, and yet she had a wealth of love to give. For decades she had devoted herself entirely to caring for her parents and later her elderly aunt. Family responsibilities had always come first, and her own dreams and desires had been quietly set aside, tucked away like a book no one had time to read. Evelyn's life was orderly and simple. She had a small, cozy house at the edge of town with a well-tended garden. Her mornings were spent tending to her flowers, feeding the birds, and walking down the narrow streets of Willow Creek, greeting neighbors with a warm smile. Everyone knew her, and everyone liked her, but there was a noticeable sadness in her eyes, a quiet loneliness that no one ever spoke of. She often sat by her window in the evening, sipping her tea, thinking about the life she had missed. There were moments she felt invisible, as though the world had moved on without her, leaving her behind in a gentle but painful silence. Across the town, just a few miles away, lived Jack Thompson, a man whose life was full of struggle and determination. Jack was in his mid-40s, a rugged cowboy with strong arms and a tired but determined face. The ranch he inherited from his late father was falling apart, and he spent most days battling the elements, repairing fences and trying to make ends meet. The weight of responsibility rested heavily on him. Every dollar mattered. Every decision carried consequences, and every day felt like a fight to keep his father's legacy alive. Jack was a man of few words. He didn't often speak about his feelings, not because he didn't have any, but because life had taught him that words alone rarely solved anything. His neighbors respected him for his hard work and honesty, but they also knew him as a solitary figure. People came to Jack when they needed help with livestock or a tough task on the farm, and he never refused. Yet, despite his reputation and quiet strength, Jack felt a deep, gnawing emptiness. He longed for companionship, someone who could see beyond the calloused hands and the dusty clothes to the man underneath, someone who could understand the silent fears and unspoken dreams he carried. The paths of Evelyn and Jack might have remained separate forever if not for a small but significant event. Willow Creek, like many towns, had its annual charity day, a day when neighbors came together to support causes close to their hearts. This year, the charity was focused on helping struggling local farmers, and Jack's ranch was among those in need. Evelyn, ever compassionate, decided to attend, believing that any chance to help someone in need was worth her time. She dressed carefully in a light blue dress, her hair neatly done, and carried a small basket of homemade baked goods to share with the crowd. When Evelyn arrived at the town hall, she noticed Jack immediately. He was standing quietly near a table, counting donations and speaking to a few townspeople in that quiet, respectful tone that somehow commanded attention without demanding it. He looked worn out, his clothes dusty from long hours on the ranch, but there was an undeniable strength in the way he carried himself. Evelyn felt a sudden pang in her heart, a mixture of admiration and longing she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. The event began in a typical fashion: speeches, small auctions, and the sharing of baked goods and crafts. Evelyn found herself walking past Jack more than once, drawn inexplicably toward him. She noticed how focused he was, how he smiled politely at the children, and how he thanked every donor with genuine appreciation. There was a humility in him that Evelyn found rare. Breaths. She had met many people in her lifetime, but few had that combination of quiet strength and kindness. As the day wore on, Evelyn realized she wanted to speak to him. Not just about the charity, but about life, about loneliness, about the quiet dreams that had never come true. She rehearsed her words silently, wondering how to begin a conversation with a man she barely knew. Jack, busy with his duties, didn't notice her at first. He was surrounded by townspeople asking questions and offering support, and yet there was something about Evelyn that made him look up. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that glance, a spark of recognition passed between them. Not recognition in the sense of knowing each other from the past, but recognition of shared loneliness, of lives shaped by struggle, duty, and unspoken desire. Finally, Evelyn found herself standing in front of Jack, her hands slightly trembling. "Mr. Thompson," she said softly, "I'd brought some baked goods for the charity. I hope you'll enjoy them." Jack looked at her, surprised by the warmth in her voice. "Thank you, Miss Parker," he replied, taking the basket. "You always know how to make things better." There was a pause, a moment of quiet where both of them felt the weight of their separate lives, their separate struggles, and their shared longing. Desk. Evelyn wanted to say more, to reach out, to bridge the gap of years and experiences between them. And in a moment of courage she hadn't felt in decades, she decided to take a bold step. She spoke from the heart, without hesitation or fear. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice stronger now. "I know this may sound sudden, but I've lived a long life, and I've learned that some opportunities come only once. I would like to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" For a moment, Jack was silent. The crowd around them fell quiet, sensing the intensity of the moment. Whispers rippled through the room. People glanced at each other in disbelief, some shaking their heads, others with eyes wide in surprise. No one had expected a proposal, especially not from a 60-year-old woman who had lived quietly in the town for decades. Jack looked at Evelyn higher, really looked at her. He saw her courage, her honesty, and the sheer vulnerability of her heart laid bare. He thought of his own loneliness, the nights spent staring at the stars, wondering if anyone would ever see him for who he truly was. In that instant he realized something profound. Life was fleeting, and love didn't always come in the ways one expected. Evelyn's plea was bold, unconventional, but it was sincere. And sincerity was something he could never ignore. That day, in the middle of Willow Creek, two lives that had once felt invisible began to intertwine. Evelyn with her quiet strength and boundless heart, and Jack with his weary soul and steadfast courage stood on the edge of a new chapter neither of them could have anticipated. The town would talk for days about what had happened, but in that moment all that mattered was the connection between two people who had spent too long waiting for life to notice them. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the town hall, Evelyn and Jack walked together toward the open fields. They didn't speak much, but there was an understanding in their silence, a recognition that sometimes the most remarkable moments in life happen when one dares to ask, when one dares to hope. And on that day, in that small, quiet town, two lonely hearts found the courage to reach for a love that had waited patiently all their lives. The day after the charity event, Willow Creek was buzzing with quiet curiosity. Everyone had heard about what had happened. The bold, unexpected plea from Evelyn Parker to Jack Thompson. Some townsfolk whispered behind closed doors, some shook their heads in disbelief, and a few even smiled knowingly, seeing the courage it took for a woman to speak her heart so openly. But for Evelyn and Jack, the world outside had suddenly faded into the background. They were both consumed by thoughts that neither had expected to face. thoughts about each other, about what had been said, and what could come next. Evelyn woke early as she always did, with the sun spilling golden light across her bedroom. But this morning, something was different. There was a flutter in her chest, a mixture of hope, anxiety, and excitement that she hadn't felt in decades. She had spent her entire life putting others first, living quietly, making sure everyone else was cared for, and yet now, for the first time, she was thinking entirely of herself. She thought of Jack, his quiet strength, the kindness in his eyes, the gentle way he had accepted her words. She prepared herself carefully, as if she were going to meet someone for an important journey. Her dress was simple but clean, a soft shade of lavender that made her feel youthful and alive. She tied her silver hair back neatly and applied a touch of her favorite rose-scented perfume. As she looked in the mirror, she caught sight of the reflection of a woman who had always been overlooked, but who now seemed capable of something extraordinary. Evelyn's heart beat faster, and she whispered to herself, "I'm not too old to love, and I'm not too late to live." Meanwhile, Jack was already hard at work on the ranch. He rose before dawn, as he always did, checking the fences, feeding the animals, and inspecting the land for any damage from the previous night's wind. Yet, even as he went through his routine, his mind kept wandering back to Evelyn. He remembered the courage in her voice, the sparkle in her eyes, and the honesty in her plea. He hadn't expected anyone to speak to him like that, to look past his worn-out clothes and tired face and see him as a man worthy of love. And now he realized he wanted to see her again. He wanted to understand her, to know what made her heart so brave. By mid-morning, the two of them had arranged to meet again, though neither wanted to admit how much they were anticipating it. Evelyn arrived at the ranch carrying a basket of fresh bread and pastries she had baked that morning. She wanted to do something thoughtful, something that would show Jack that her feelings were sincere and not just impulsive. When she stepped onto the porch, Jack greeted her with a quiet smile, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply looked at each other, two people who had carried loneliness for far too long, suddenly meeting in a moment that felt like destiny. Jack invited Evelyn to sit with him under the shade of a large oak tree, a favorite spot of his for thinking and reflecting. The air was warm and filled with the scent of fresh grass and hay. Birds chirped in the distance, and the soft hum of life on the ranch created a sense of peace that neither of them had felt in years. Evelyn set down her basket and smiled at him, and for the first time, Jack felt a strange lightness in his chest. It was as if her presence alone could make the weight of the world feel a little less heavy. They began to talk, carefully at first, about simple things, the weather, the charity event, the state of the ranch. Evelyn asked questions about the animals, the crops, and the challenges he faced, genuinely interested in his life and his struggles. Jack in turn listened with attention and patience, appreciating her curiosity and warmth. Gradually, the conversation shifted. Evelyn shared stories of her childhood, her parents, and the years she had spent caring for others. Jack spoke about his father, the hardships of ranch life, and the pressures he felt to keep the land alive. With each story, they found themselves nodding in understanding, realizing that both of their lives had been shaped by responsibility, sacrifice, and quiet longing. Passed like minutes. They shared laughter over small memories, smiled at each other's small quirks, and even found comfort in silence. There was a gentle rhythm to their interaction, a feeling that they had known each other much longer than a single day. Evelyn noticed how Jack's eyes softened when he spoke about the animals and the land, and Jack noticed how Evelyn's face lit up when she recounted stories of kindness and compassion. Each observation deepened their connection, and both felt something stir in their hearts, a spark of hope, a glimmer of love. Evelyn, feeling bold and inspired by the natural flow of their conversation, decided to speak more openly about what had brought her there in the first place. She told Jack that she had always lived a life of quiet patience, waiting for the right person, but never expecting that they might appear at the very moment she needed them most. Her words were sincere and heartfelt. She admitted that her plea at the charity event had been a mix of courage and desperation, but above all it had been honest. Jack listened, his chest tightening with emotion, realizing that this woman had bared her soul to him without fear of judgment. Jack, in return, began to open up in ways he rarely allowed himself. He spoke of his fears, the fear of failure, the fear of losing the ranch, and the fear of spending his life alone. Evelyn listened with patience and empathy, never interrupting, never judging. Her presence made him feel safe, and her understanding made him feel seen. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope that perhaps life had more to offer than just hard work and quiet resignation. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, they decided to take a walk around the ranch. Evelyn marveled at the wide open spaces, the rolling fields, and the way the wind danced across the tall grasses. Jack pointed out areas that needed repair, shared stories of his father, and explained the history of the land. Evelyn listened intently, fascinated by his knowledge and dedication. She could see the love he had for the land, the way he poured his heart into every corner of it, and she admired his strength and resilience. During their walk, a moment of quiet intimacy passed between them. Jack reached out to steady Evelyn as she stepped over a small stream, and their hands brushed gently. There was no need for words. The touch conveyed more than either could express. Evelyn felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of comfort, excitement, and a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in decades. Jack, too, felt a shift within himself, a recognition that this woman might be the companion he had been searching for, the person who could stand beside him through life's challenges and joys. As evening approached, they returned to the porch, tired but content. Evelyn offered Jack some of the pastries she had brought, and they shared a simple meal together, enjoying the quiet of the ranch as night began to fall. Stars twinkled in the clear sky, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of earth and flowers. In that peaceful moment, they both realized that the day had been extraordinary. What had begun as an unusual proposal had turned into a day of genuine connection, understanding, and a growing sense of love. Neither of them knew what the future held, but both felt a sense of certainty they could not ignore. They had dared to take a step beyond fear, to open their hearts when the world expected them to remain silent. In doing so, they had discovered something rare and precious, a bond built on honesty, respect, and courage. Evelyn's bold plea had not been foolish. It had been the catalyst for a day that changed both of their lives forever. As they finally said goodnight, Evelyn felt a quiet excitement bubbling inside her. She realized that she no longer wanted to wait for life to notice her. She wanted to embrace the possibilities, to explore the feelings that had awakened within her, and to take control of her own happiness. Jack, too, felt a renewed sense of hope. He understood that life could offer second chances, that love could appear in the most unexpected forms, and that sometimes the heart knew what it needed long before the mind could accept it. And so, under the canopy of stars, two souls who had once lived in quiet solitude found themselves at the beginning of a journey neither had imagined. Their story was just starting, a story that would test their courage, challenge their expectations, and ultimately prove that it is never too late for love, never too late for companionship, and never too late to embrace life with an open heart. The days following Evelyn's bold plea were filled with an unusual tension, a quiet anticipation that neither she nor Jack had experienced before. Willow Creek had resumed its peaceful rhythm, but for Evelyn and Jack, the world felt subtly, irreversibly changed. Each morning, Evelyn would wake with a flutter of hope in her chest, wondering if Jack would call, if he would consider her words seriously, or if the day's courage had been just a fleeting moment of bravery. Her heart wanted to believe, but years of living quietly and putting others first had made her cautious. Jack, on his part, was restless. The ranch required his constant attention, but even as he mended fences, checked the animals, or repaired the water troughs, his thoughts kept wandering back to Evelyn. He kept recalling her eyes, the softness in her voice, and the courage it took for a woman her age to speak her heart so openly. At first, he tried to dismiss it as a strange, unexpected moment, a fluke of emotion. Yet the more he thought, the more he realized that her words had stirred something deep inside him, something he had buried under years of responsibility and solitude. It was Jack who finally suggested they meet again. He did so cautiously, unsure of what his own heart might reveal, but eager to understand the woman who had so boldly spoken to him. Evelyn agreed immediately, her excitement barely contained, prepared herself as if she were stepping into a new chapter of life. Dressing simply yet elegantly, carrying a basket of fresh bread and fruit to share. As she walked toward the ranch, her heart raced with anticipation and a small touch of nervousness, the kind she had not felt in decades. When she arrived, Jack greeted her with a nod and a tentative smile. There was a new softness in his eyes, a subtle warmth that had not been present the first time they had met. He motioned for her to sit on the porch, and they spent the first few minutes in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cattle, the distant neigh of a horse, and the gentle rustling of the wind through the trees. It was a moment of peace, a rare pause in lives that had been so full of struggle and responsibility. Eventually, Evelyn began to speak, gently at first, then with more confidence. She asked about the ranch, about the animals, and about Jack's day-to-day struggles. Jack answered with honesty, speaking of long hours, challenges with weather and crops, and the constant worry that the ranch might not survive. Evelyn listened intently, offering small words of encouragement, recognizing the determination it took to continue despite the obstacles. Her compassion was genuine, and Jack found himself admiring her more and more with each passing moment. As the morning turned into afternoon, their conversation deepened. Evelyn shared her own story, her life in Willow Creek, the years spent caring for family, and the quiet longing she had always felt for companionship and love. Jack, in turn, revealed pieces of his past, the early struggles of taking over the ranch, the loneliness that had become a constant companion, and the rare moments when he allowed himself to hope for something better. Fresh. There was an honesty between them that felt rare and precious, a sense that neither needed to hide their flaws or their fears. At one point, Evelyn hesitated, then said softly, "I know my request was unusual. I didn't expect anyone to understand, but I've learned that life is too short to wait for the perfect moment. Sometimes you have to take a chance." Jack considered her words carefully. He could feel the truth in them, the courage it had taken for her to speak so openly. He realized that her plea was not a moment of whimsy, but a deliberate, heartfelt expression of her desires, a call for connection in a world that had often overlooked them both. Jack took a deep breath, finally allowing himself to consider the possibilities. He had spent so long managing the practicalities of life, the ranch, the animals, the debts, that he had almost forgotten about the heart's needs. Evelyn reminded him that life could offer unexpected opportunities for happiness, that love could appear even when least expected. He felt a stirring in his chest, a warmth that had been absent for years. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to imagine a future that was not defined by struggle alone, but by companionship, understanding, and care. As the afternoon wore on, they decided to walk around the ranch together. Evelyn admired the open fields, the rolling hills, and the way the sunlight danced across the grass. Jack pointed out areas that needed repair, explained his father's old techniques for managing crops, and shared stories of how the ranch had been passed down through generations. Evelyn listened with fascination, genuinely interested in his work. And Jack found himself impressed by her intelligence, her curiosity, and the warmth she brought to every observation. During their walk, a quiet intimacy began to develop. Jack noticed the careful way Evelyn moved over uneven ground, the gentleness in her hands, and the genuine delight in her eyes when she saw something beautiful in nature. Evelyn in turn observed Jack's quiet strength, the way he handled challenges with patience, and the soft, unspoken kindness that permeated his actions. Their connection was subtle yet undeniable, a bond forming in the spaces between words, in glances, gestures, and the shared moments of understanding. As evening approached, they returned to the porch, tired but content. Evelyn unpacked her basket, offering Jack freshly baked bread and fruit. They shared a simple meal together, enjoying the quiet of the ranch and the gentle colors of the setting sun. Jack found himself speaking more freely, opening up about worries and hopes he had never voiced before. Evelyn listened without judgment, offering encouragement, laughter, and understanding. By the time the stars began to twinkle overhead, there was a feeling between them that transcended words, a shared recognition that their connection was growing stronger with each passing moment. Evelyn could feel her heart swelling with hope. She realized that she no longer wanted to wait for life to hand her happiness. She wanted to take it, to embrace the opportunities that had finally arrived. She wanted to be seen, understood, and loved, not as a woman of 60, but as a human being with a heart full of compassion and courage. Jack, too, felt a transformation. He recognized that life could still offer joy, companionship, and love, even in the midst of hardship. Evelyn's presence had awakened feelings he thought had long been buried, reminding him that it was never too late to find someone who truly understood and cared. As the night settled over the ranch, they sat quietly under the stars, speaking softly of dreams and possibilities. Evelyn expressed her desire to share her life with someone who would value her presence, and Jack admitted that he had begun to see her not just as a friend or companion, but as a woman whose courage and sincerity had touched him deeply. There was no rush, no pressure, just a mutual understanding that their bond was meaningful and rare. In the days that followed, they continued to spend time together, each visit strengthening the trust and affection between them. Evelyn helped Jack with small tasks around the ranch, bringing warmth and care to the work he had always done alone. Jack, in turn, taught Evelyn about the land, the animals, and the ways of ranch life. Together, they laughed, shared stories, and supported each other in ways that neither had expected. The bond that had begun with a bold plea was growing into something genuine, built on mutual respect, understanding, and a slowly deepening love. Began to feel a sense of fulfillment she had never known. Her life, once defined by routine and duty, now held excitement, hope, and the possibility of companionship, purpose. Evelyn's presence brought comfort, joy, and a perspective he had not realized he was missing. They were learning that love was not about age, wealth, or circumstance. It was about connection, courage, and the willingness to open one's heart. And so, as the days passed, a quiet transformation occurred. Two lives, once marked by solitude and responsibility, were beginning to intertwine. Evelyn and Jack were discovering that even in the later chapters of life, love could bloom in the most unexpected ways. Their story was no longer just about a bold plea. It was about trust, companionship, and the simple yet profound joy of being seen and valued by another human being. For the first time, both realized that love could arrive suddenly, quietly, and powerfully, and that it could change everything, even a life that had once felt ordinary and complete. Their hearts were opening step by step toward a future neither had imagined, yet both felt ready to embrace. The day of the wedding arrived in Willow Creek with a bright and gentle sun, casting warmth over the quiet town and the sprawling ranch that Jack Thompson had worked so tirelessly to maintain. It was unusual for anyone in the town to see a wedding happen so suddenly, yet there was an air of anticipation and curiosity that made the morning feel alive. People whispered in the streets, some in surprise, others with admiration, and a few with doubt. But for Evelyn and Jack, the world outside the ranch seemed far away. Today was theirs, a day they had chosen to embrace courage, love, and hope. Evelyn woke early, her heart pounding with excitement and a touch of nervousness. She moved quietly through her home, careful not to disturb the neighbors, and prepared herself with care. Her dress was simple, elegant, and lavender in color, a hue that reminded her of early mornings in her garden when the sun first touched the petals of her flowers. Her hair, silver and shining, was neatly arranged in a soft bun, and she added a small ribbon that had belonged to her mother many years ago. It was a piece of the past, a memory she carried with her, and she felt it brought her courage. She paused for a moment before the mirror, taking a deep breath and looking into her own eyes. "I am ready," she whispered softly. "I am ready to embrace happiness, to take this chance and to live my life fully." There was a quiet strength in her words, a determination that had grown over decades of patience and longing. She carried not just her own hopes, but also the dreams of a life she had long imagined but never dared to pursue. Today those dreams would take shape in a way that was both unexpected and extraordinary. Meanwhile, Jack was already at the ranch, preparing for the small but meaningful ceremony. The morning chores had been completed early, and now he focused on the details that would make the day special. Simple flowers were gathered from the garden, chairs were arranged neatly on the lawn, and the old oak tree where they had first shared quiet conversations was decorated with soft ribbons. Jack's hands were steady, his heart focused, but beneath the calm exterior there was a mix of excitement and nervousness. He had spent years managing the ranch, facing storms and solving problems, but today brought a new challenge, the challenge of opening his heart fully and embracing the unexpected gift of love. As the guests began to arrive, the townspeople were filled with curiosity. Many had known Evelyn and Jack for years, yet none had expected to witness a union like this. Some whispered about the age difference, others about the suddenness of the proposal, but a quiet excitement ran through the crowd. They arrived in their simple Sunday best, bringing warmth and goodwill, and a sense of community settled over the ranch. Children ran through the open fields, laughing and chasing each other, while older neighbors offered knowing smiles. The air was filled with anticipation and a shared understanding that love often came in forms that defied expectations. Evelyn arrived at the ranch, guided by a close friend who had helped her prepare. Her heart raced, her hands trembled slightly, and yet there was a serene smile on her face. She stepped carefully onto the soft grass, the breeze brushing against her cheeks, and she caught sight of Jack. He stood tall and steady beneath the oak tree, dressed simply but with an air of dignity. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, two souls who had found each other against the odds, ready to begin a new chapter together. The ceremony began quietly, with only the soft sounds of nature in the background. No music was needed, for the gentle rustling of leaves and the occasional call of a bird provided a natural harmony. Jack and Evelyn stood facing each other beneath the tree, their hands clasped together, fingers intertwined. The officiant, a close friend of the family, spoke softly about love, courage, and the importance of embracing life's unexpected moments. Evelyn listened intently, her heart swelling with emotion, and Jack felt a deep sense of peace, as though all the struggles of the past had led to this singular, perfect moment. Vows were exchanged with sincerity and simplicity. Evelyn spoke first, her voice steady but filled with emotion. She promised to support Jack, to stand by his side, and to cherish every moment they had together. Her words were heartfelt, reflecting decades of longing and the courage it had taken to finally ask for the love she had dreamed of. Jack, moved by her honesty and bravery, responded with words that spoke of respect, admiration, and a commitment to share his life with her. His promises were simple but powerful, rooted in a love that had grown quietly, deeply, and unexpectedly over the past days and weeks. As they placed rings on each other's fingers, a soft cheer rose from the small crowd of guests. It was a quiet celebration, not one of grandeur or extravagance, but of genuine joy. The townspeople, once filled with doubt or surprise, now watched with warmth and admiration. They saw the love in Evelyn's eyes, the sincerity in Jack's gaze, and the quiet happiness that surrounded them. In that moment, the whispers of skepticism were replaced with smiles of approval, and the entire town seemed to recognize that something extraordinary had taken place. After the vows, Evelyn and Jack walked slowly around the ranch together, hand in hand. They laughed softly at shared memories of the past few days, recalling moments of awkwardness, small gestures of kindness, and the growing understanding that had brought them to this day. There was a sense of freedom in their laughter, a release from years of solitude and worry. Each step they took together felt like a promise of support, trust, and companionship that would guide them through whatever the future held. As the sun began to set, casting long golden shadows over the fields, the couple and their guests gathered for a simple celebration. Tables were laid with homemade treats, fresh bread and fruit, and everyone shared in the joy of the occasion. Children ran through the fields, neighbors shared stories, and laughter filled the air. The ranch, once quiet and solitary, was now alive with warmth, connection, and the undeniable power of love. Evelyn and Jack moved among their friends and family, smiling, sharing hugs, and savoring the extraordinary moment that had unfolded so unexpectedly. Throughout the evening, Evelyn found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She thought of the years spent caring for others, the moments of quiet longing, and the bold decision to speak her heart at the charity event. She realized that life had given her a gift, not just the companionship of Jack, but the courage to embrace her own desires, to take a risk, and to believe in the possibility of love at any stage of life. Jack, too, reflected on his own journey. He had faced countless struggles, endured lonely nights, and carried the weight of responsibility for many years. Yet Evelyn had reminded him that life could still offer joy, that love could appear in unexpected ways, and that opening one's heart was always worth the risk. As the stars appeared one by one in the clear night sky, Evelyn and Jack stepped away from the gathering to stand beneath the oak tree once more. The soft glow of lanterns cast a warm light over their faces, and they stood in comfortable silence, holding hands and feeling the bond that had grown between them. The day had been extraordinary, full of laughter, tears, and heartfelt promises. Yet it was also just the beginning, a first step into a shared life that neither could have predicted, but both were eager to embrace. The town of Willow Creek, once filled with curiosity and doubt, now looked on with quiet admiration. The union of Evelyn and Jack had shown them that love was not limited by age, circumstance, or convention. It was a reminder that courage, honesty, and openness could create bonds that were stronger than any obstacle. The couple's story became a small but powerful legend in the town, a tale of bravery, love, and the extraordinary moments that could arise when one dared to follow the heart. As night fully settled over the ranch, Evelyn and Jack returned to the quiet of their new life together. The celebration had ended, the guests had departed, and the ranch was once again filled with the gentle sounds of nature. Yet there was a new warmth in the air, a quiet contentment that neither had known before. They walked slowly to their shared home, side by side, ready to begin this new chapter with hope, love, and the knowledge that life could still surprise them in the most wonderful ways. And so, under the canopy of stars and the quiet hum of the countryside, two hearts that had waited patiently for decades finally found each other. Their story was a testament to courage, honesty, and the enduring power of love. It was a day that would remain in their memories forever, not because of grand gestures or extravagance, but because of the simple, extraordinary truth that love could arrive at any age, and that when it did, it could transform even the quietest cause, most ordinary life into something remarkable. The days after the wedding brought a sense of quiet joy and new beginnings to the Thompson Ranch. Willow Creek had returned to its usual rhythm, but for Evelyn and Jack, the world felt transformed. Life was no longer simply a series of routines and responsibilities. It had become a shared adventure, filled with companionship, laughter, and the simple pleasures of being together. The air of uncertainty and solitude that had once surrounded them had been replaced with warmth, connection, and the steady, comforting presence of one another. Evelyn found herself waking each morning with a renewed sense of purpose. For years her days had been structured around the care of others, her parents, her aunt, and the small community she had quietly served. But now she was living for herself, for Jack, and for the bond they had built together. She took joy in small tasks around the ranch, preparing breakfast, tending to the flowers, and helping with chores she had never imagined herself doing. Each act, no matter how simple, carried meaning. It was her way of contributing, of sharing her life, and of deepening the connection she felt with Jack. Jack, too, discovered a new perspective on life. The ranch, which had once been a place of constant struggle and worry, now felt alive with possibility. With Evelyn by his side, tasks that had previously seemed overwhelming were approached with a sense of teamwork and support. He taught her the skills of ranch life, showing her how to care for the animals, tend to the fields, and manage the daily demands of the land. Evelyn, eager to learn and contribute, absorbed every lesson with patience and enthusiasm, and Jack could not help but admire her determination and grace. Their days were filled with quiet routines that gradually became the foundation of their life together. Mornings began with breakfast on the porch, the sun rising over the fields and the soft sounds of the ranch coming alive. They would feed the animals, check on the crops, and sometimes just sit together in silence, enjoying the comfort of shared presence. Afternoons were often spent walking across the property, sharing stories, memories, and dreams. They laughed often, discovering humor in small mishaps and delight in the simple beauty of nature. In these ordinary moments they found extraordinary happiness, a reminder that love often thrives not in grand gestures but in the steady rhythm of life shared together. Evenings were their favorite time. As the sun dipped low and painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, Evelyn and Jack would sit under the oak tree where their connection had deepened. Sometimes they spoke of the past, reflecting on lives that had been shaped by solitude, responsibility, and missed opportunities. Sometimes they spoke of the future, imagining possibilities, dreams, and adventures they could undertake together. And sometimes they simply sat quietly, holding hands, feeling the heartbeat of the land beneath them, and appreciating the rare gift of having found one another. The townspeople, once skeptical about the sudden union, gradually came to admire and respect the couple. Neighbors visited more often, curious to see the life that had blossomed on the ranch since the wedding. Friends and family expressed their joy, celebrating the courage that had brought Evelyn and Jack together and the example they had set for embracing life fully at any age. Children would run through the fields calling greetings to the couple, while older neighbors offered words of admiration and support.
Willow Creek had learned that love could arrive in unexpected ways, and that it was never too late to open one's heart.
Evelyn, reflecting on her life, realized that the bold choice she had made months earlier, to speak her heart at the charity event, had transformed her world entirely. She had spent years in quiet patience, waiting for love to arrive, never daring to believe it might be possible. But by taking a courageous step, by embracing her desires honestly and openly, she had found a companion who valued her, respected her, and loved her for who she truly was. Every day now was a gift, a chance to live fully and to share the love she had kept hidden for so long. Jack, too, felt the profound impact of their union. He had spent years struggling to maintain the ranch, weighed down by responsibilities and carrying the quiet burden of loneliness. Evelyn's presence brought not only love, but also a sense of partnership, hope, and renewal. Her care, insight, and enthusiasm reminded him that life was more than work and survival. It was about connection, joy, and the simple pleasures of sharing one's life with another person. Together, they faced challenges with patience and cooperation, learning to rely on each other's strengths and to support each other through difficulties. Their bond deepened as the seasons changed. Spring brought a renewal of life on the ranch, with new growth in the fields and blossoms in the garden. Evelyn reveled in the beauty of the flowers she tended, often smiling as she shared her knowledge with Jack, who appreciated her attention to detail and care. Summer brought long days of hard work, laughter, and quiet evenings watching the sunset over the fields. Autumn arrived with a tapestry of gold and red, and they would walk hand in hand, reminiscing about the year's moments and dreaming of the next. Winter, though cold, was filled with warmth inside the house, where they would sit by the fireplace, sharing stories and planning for the future. Each season reinforced their connection, each day adding layers of trust, love, and shared experience. Evelyn often thought of the life she had lived before Jack, the quiet patience, the hidden longing, and the years of putting others first. And yet, she did not dwell in regret. Instead, she understood that every experience, every challenge, and every quiet moment of waiting had led her to this moment. She had found love in a way that was genuine, profound, and deeply meaningful. It was not a love defined by youth or society's expectations, but by courage, honesty, and the willingness to open one's heart despite the years gone by. Jack, too, reflected on his journey. He had faced hardships, financial struggles, and long nights of loneliness, believing that life was primarily about survival and responsibility. Yet Evelyn had shown him that life could hold unexpected joy, that love could appear when least expected, and that opening one's heart was never too late. Together, they discovered that happiness could be built not only through work and perseverance, but through connection, understanding, and shared experiences. Their love became a quiet inspiration in Willow Creek. Neighbors often spoke of the couple with admiration, noting how they cared for each other, supported one another, and faced life's challenges together. Young people in the town, who sometimes feared that opportunities for love or happiness might be limited, saw in Evelyn and Jack an example that courage, honesty, and openness could lead to profound connection, no matter one's age. Their story became a reminder that life was full of possibilities, and that it was never too late to pursue happiness. The ranch itself seemed to flourish under their care. Jack's work, once a solitary struggle, now had the joy of partnership. Evelyn's touch brought beauty and care to the land, from the well-tended garden to the animals that responded to her gentle attention. Together they celebrated small victories, a healthy crop, a newborn calf, or a repaired fence. Each success, no matter how minor, became an opportunity to share laughter, pride, and gratitude. Life on the ranch had become not only sustainable but full of warmth, purpose, and love. As the years passed, Evelyn and Jack grew closer, their bond deepening with every shared experience. They celebrated birthdays, holidays, and quiet Sunday mornings together. They learned to communicate with understanding and patience, resolving disagreements with respect and compassion. They built traditions, like walking under the oak tree at sunset, sharing stories by the fire, and tending to the land together. Each tradition reinforced the love that had grown between them, each day serving as a reminder that happiness was not simply found, but created together. Evelyn and Jack discovered that love at any age was not just possible, but extraordinary. It was a love that grew from shared vulnerability, mutual respect, and the willingness to embrace life's uncertainties together. It was a love that celebrated small moments, cherished ordinary days, and honored the depth of human connection. They realized that age, circumstance, or past struggles were not barriers to happiness. They were part of the journey that had led them to each other. On quiet evenings, they would sit together, hand in hand, looking out over the ranch and reflecting on the life they had built. Evelyn often thought of the moment when she first spoke her heart, and Jack remembered the day he first allowed himself to imagine a life with her. Both knew that their story was rare, precious, and a testament to the power of courage, honesty, and love. It was a story they would carry with them always, a reminder that happiness and companionship could be found even in the most unexpected moments. Breath. And so, in the quiet beauty of Willow Creek, two hearts that had once been lonely found a love that was enduring, profound, and full of life. They faced the future together, with hope, trust, and the knowledge that each day offered new opportunities for connection, joy, and shared experience. Their story was proof that love knows no age, that courage can transform a life, and that it is never too late to embrace happiness with an open heart. Evelyn and Jack's days were now full, rich with the simple joys of companionship. They sat and ostrayed at meals, laughed often, and supported one another in every way possible. The love they had found was quiet yet powerful, a source of strength that carried them through challenges and amplified the joys of ordinary life. It brought promise. Every sunrise brought promise. Every sunset brought gratitude, and every day was a reminder that true happiness comes from being seen, valued, and loved. Together, they lived fully, knowing that the bold decision to follow their hearts had changed their lives forever. They had discovered the extraordinary in the ordinary, the beauty in shared moments, and the profound power of love that defies expectations. And as the seasons continued to pass, their bond only grew stronger, a shining example to everyone who knew them that it is never too late to love, to hope, and to embrace life with courage and joy.